No person of any rank may sacrifice, consult diviners, or read the entrails of birds. The law is dated the 8th of November, 392 of the Common Era. Theodosius issued it from Constantinople. It is the most comprehensive ban on state divination on record. It was also the 11th law in its chapter. Codex Theodosianus, Book 16, Chapter 10, runs from 320 to 392. Across 70 years, the chapter recorded 11 laws against a discipline the state still notionally funded. The question is not when augury ended. The question is when the legislation caught up with what had already ended. This episode traces a censor system. The Quindecemviri Sacris Faciundis, 15 priests, were one institutional spine of that system. 2 documents bracket its life. One was written by a Roman senator in 44 before the Common Era. The other was compiled almost 5 centuries later. Cicero wrote De Divinatione in 44 before the Common Era, 2 books, dialogue form. The author was himself an augur. The discipline he attacks is his own. The second document is the Codex Theodosianus, compiled in 438 of the Common Era. Book 16, Chapter 10, preserves 11 laws on Roman divination across the long 4th century. The 2 documents bracket the institutional life of Roman state divination at its outer limits. Cicero records the discipline at its institutional peak, already mocked from within. The Codex records its legal termination 3.5 centuries later. The intervening process is the forensic case. In De Divinatione Book 2, Cicero quotes a line from Cato the Elder. How can 2 augurs meet without laughing? Cato wrote a century before Cicero. The skepticism was already that old at Cicero's writing. By Theodosius's time it was over 400 years old. Cicero's own argument is more substantial than the joke. Augury's authority, he writes, rests on tradition rather than evidence. The discipline produces signs that fit decisions already made. The skepticism did not end the discipline, the state did. Book 16, Chapter 10 of the Codex Theodosianus opens with a law of 320 under Constantine. It ends with the comprehensive ban of 392, 11 separate constitutions. Successive emperors regulated, restricted, and finally banned the discipline the state had once funded. The chapter is the legislative trace of an institution being dismantled. Mary Beard, John North, and Simon Price treat the augural system as a working institutional discipline. Their Religions of Rome, published 1998, is the standard reference. Augury was not folk superstition. It was an instrument of state cognition. Alan Cameron's 2011 study, The Last Pagans of Rome, sharpens the reading. Cameron argues that the late 4th century legislation formalized a hollowing of the institution that was already largely complete. This episode adopts Cameron's reading. The 392 law did not kill a living discipline. It records the legal death of a discipline already structurally retired. If the discipline was already hollow when Theodosius legislated, when did it actually stop? It stopped in stages, across a century of withdrawn patronage and converted personnel. The augural college had 2 functions before Christianization. It read prodigies as policy-relevant signals to the Senate. It maintained the priestly offices that connected Roman public action to ritual sanction. The Quindecemviri Sacris Faciundis guarded the Sibylline books and consulted them in moments of state crisis. The college was state-funded, and its members were drawn from the senatorial class. The state augur was not a private mystic, he was a public official. That apparatus thinned across the 3rd century of the Common Era. The documentary record on state augury contracts sharply. The augural college continued as a list of names. The Quindecemviri continued to exist on paper. Public augury survives the 3rd century as ceremonial habit, not as policy input. The legislative arc begins under Constantine. Codex Theodosianus 16, Chapter 10, opens with a law of 320 restricting haruspicy. Constantius II bans nocturnal sacrifices in 357. The pressure accumulates by decade rather than by year. Julian's attempt to revive paganism between 361 and 363 is the diagnostic exception. He had been raised Christian and converted back. He tried to restore the temples and the priesthoods. A revival is needed because the institution is no longer running. Julian's program lasted barely 2 years. He died on campaign in Persia. The augural apparatus was not restored. In 382, Gratian removed the altar of victory from the Senate House. The same year he refused the title Pontifex Maximus. The refusal is structurally diagnostic. Roman emperors had held that office since Augustus. Gratian declined an office his predecessors had held for over 400 years. The senator Symmachus filed an appeal in 384 for the altar's return. His Relatio 3 defends the institutional value of Roman public religion to the imperial chancery. Ambrose of Milan replied for the Christian court. Symmachus lost the appeal. The defense itself documents how thin the institutional ground had become. The senator had to argue for an apparatus that had been operating for 9 centuries. Temples were ordered closed in 391. Codex Theodosianus 1610-12 followed on the 8th of November 392. The mechanism was not a single ban. The mechanism was the steady removal of state cognition from the divinatory apparatus. 3 strands ran together, state patronage thinned. The personnel who had held augural offices converted to Christianity or retired without successors. The cultural authority of the discipline drained out of senatorial life across 2 generations. The 392 law did not cause the decommissioning. It legally acknowledged a census system that had already gone silent. Cameron's reading is the cleanest. The legislation formalized what was already structurally complete. The discipline was not refuted, it was defunded. The Roman case is not unique. 2 other state-funded divinatory apparatuses ended through the same mechanism. Neither required a legislative ban. The Mesopotamian corpus is the longer case. Enumera Nu Enlil is a corpus of celestial omens. Its standardized form dates from between 1500 and 1100 before the Common Era. It ran for over 1400 years as state divination. The Neo-Assyrian period was its peak. Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal, 2 7th century kings, maintained extensive networks of astrologer scholars called Umanu. Hermann Hunger's edition of their archive preserves hundreds of daily celestial reports filed for royal decision-making. That patronage shifted. The Achaemenid and Seleucid empires that succeeded Assyria and Babylon did not need Akkadian-speaking priesthoods at the same scale. The Hellenistic and Parthian successors funded fewer of them. The decline was political and linguistic together, not patronage alone. The last dated cuneiform astronomical almanac is from 75 of the Common Era. Roman state augury was approaching its 3rd century thinning at that point. No emperor banned the Mesopotamian tradition. States simply stopped funding it. The Maya case is shorter and sharper. The classic period polity systems that funded Maya divinatory scholarship collapsed across the 9th century. The final long count date at Toninar is from 909. The polities that read the Venus tables and the eclipse predictions for political timing dissolved. Maya astronomers treated Venus's heliacal rising as the inauspicious moment for war. The astronomical material had been state cognition, not stargazing. The Dresden Codex survived. It is a screenfold manuscript on bark paper, dated paleographically to the 11th or 12th century. Anthony Aveni's analysis treats it as a post-classic preservation of classic period astronomical divinatory knowledge. The diagnostic phrasing is mechanical. Post-classic scribes copied a corpus the classic period state apparatus had stopped acting on 6 centuries earlier. Bishop Diego de Landa burned most of the surviving codices at Mani in 1562. The legal end came almost 7 centuries after the institutional end. The pattern is the same in all 3 cases. The apparatus is state-funded. When the state withdraws funding and personnel, the apparatus fades. Legislation, where it arrives, formalizes. A state funds an instrument for reading threat. The instrument is institutional, not merely textual. When the state withdraws the funding and the personnel, the instrument fades. Whether legislation arrives to formalize the ending is incidental. The pattern is this: an empire decommissions its own censors. Divinatory systems are not refuted, they are defunded. The records can survive the institution by a century or a millennium. Cuneiform almanacs were copied for centuries after Assyrian patronage ended. Maya codices were copied for centuries after classic period polities collapsed. Rome's case is the legislated one. The 8th of November 392 stands in the legal record as the formal end of state augury. The augury itself had stopped serving the state earlier. The Roman state had built the augural apparatus across centuries. It was the last instrument the state retired. The law acknowledged a census system that had already gone silent. Subscribe to Omen History. New Omen Patterns episodes every weekday, forensic files every Sunday.